My father, during the 70s, he was born in 1969, he realized a very fundamental aspect and obviously felt very grateful. The fundamental aspect which I'm talking about is the great sacrifice. And it was the great sacrifice that my grandparents made to get their 7 children go ahead with their lives so that they could attend the school. They could barely, trust me, they could barely afford them food, clothes, books, notebooks, pencils, but they did it because they also wanted that they could attend a university. Some, however, didn't take the great opportunity to attend it. However, my dad took it because he didn't not only wanted to follow his dreams and become a civil engineer in one of the most prestigious universities in Mexico, but he had another important task. It was to give his parents everything they did for him. In 1994, at a work meeting where my dad used to work, he was presented with the great opportunity to lay the first stone of the Hospital de las Californias, Children's Hospital here in Tijuana, without receiving anything back. But he took it because he knew the great necessity, how suffering is like, and the impact that was going to be created. The great affection that many people felt towards my dad inspired my dad to make more philanthropic acts so that the children could obtain a better health and education. Up to now, my dad has helped as many young people by giving them scholarships and stopping those kids, young people, to not looking for a life by working without even finishing their elementary studies. He has also helped the elderly to have a happy and deserving life, as well as the children and adults to have a decent health, among other philanthropic acts, such as providing employment to those who are lacking of it. My dad once told me that he had the great opportunity to live in poverty. This moment, I was less than 12 years old, but it impacted me a lot that I still remember. So he told me this, that he had the great opportunity to live in poverty, and I really didn't get what my dad wanted to tell me, because a great opportunity isn't enjoying a poverty, obvious. So I asked my dad and told him, but isn't a great opportunity as when you have the best experience? And he told me, yes, as when you have the best experience. But the best experiences are the ones that leave you with a learning, with an apprenticeship. So that was the moment that I totally agree with my dad. Then the second time that my dad impacted a lot of me was when he told me something that we're living right now. He told me that sometimes in order to give, in order to value things, in order to act as a philanthropic person, we need to pass throughout a hard situation. And nowadays, I totally agree with him more than ever, because it is what we're suffering right now. We've been throughout this pandemic, and what this pandemic has shown us is that we didn't value things such as people, such as moments, such as things that we didn't value before, and now we are valuing it. My father known how it is to suffer lack of sustenance, lack of food, sometimes not seeing his friends because they're working, living at a poor neighborhood. He proposed himself that by the moment that he would get his first job, he would help the others. Sometimes experiences changes your perspective of seeing life and the way of acting. That is the reason that philanthropy is my living heritage. Although I never see how my dad suffered, although I never been throughout that situation, I can totally see my dad's experiences throughout his acts. My living heritage, philanthropy. Good morning, I am Noemi González Espinoza, 4th semester high school student, and I'm really glad to be here because I will show something that is part of me, my living heritage, which is philanthropy. First of all, I want you to place in context. What is philanthropy? Philanthropy, that you know, first of all, philanthropy can end with poverty. Well, philanthropy is the loving for humankind according to learning to give organization. And it is derived by the Greek words philos, which means loving, and anthropos, which means humankind. And its main purpose is to solve or prevent social problems. However, during this century, philanthropy has been seen in two ways. A good way, which is the actual true philanthropy, and a bad way, which is selfishness. But you might question, why selfishness? Sadly, many entrepreneurs or people that run companies, I'm not saying all the people that run companies, but they use philanthropy or make great acts to give a better image for their company, which is kind of sad. But the most important thing about this is that you can't detect them really fast. Because first of all, they feel pressure. And pressure with philanthropy doesn't make sense. Because philanthropy is the loving from our hearts, not the loving that came throughout pressure. And this leads me to the second reason. They made regular donations. Although they are good, they made, for example, 100 bottles of water during the Mexico's earthquake. Meanwhile, you're thinking that those 100 bottles of water could give them a middle class or a lower class person. Meanwhile, there are two companies, two philanthropic companies, that had providing during the earthquake schools, also computers for they could work, between others. Now I want you to talk about those people who say that they are philanthropic, but they really aren't. Rather, they are charitable people, which I really don't judge them because their main purpose is to help others and give them and provide them things. But they don't know how to do it. That is the problem. But what they really need to do is to act as a philanthropic person. And by this, I want to give you a brief example. Let's suppose that there's a person that picks up a homeless family and provides them a home where to live, monthly money, food, a bed, a sofa, whatever they need to get to survive. But there's a moment when this person can no longer provide this. The consequence is obvious. This family will return to poverty and will return to be a homeless family because that person didn't provide them education and employment. From the other hand, we have a philanthropic person that also provides them a home where to live, monthly money, food, clothes, a bed. But as I said it before, this philanthropic person would add education and provide them employment. By the moment that this philanthropic person can no longer provide them, which is the bed, the home where to live, monthly money, this family can go ahead by themselves. At my presentation, I told you that philanthropy can actually end with poverty. I think that you are still doubting about this, but it isn't my theory, neither my conspiracy. It is the actual reality. But it might be, as we as Mexicans, that we stick with this mindset that we always be poor. That Latin Americans will always be poor. But there is the actual reality. That is the reason that I will show you two graphs. The first graph, according to the World Bank, this represents the percentage of population that lives with $5.50 per day or less. We have the United States, Argentina, Chile, Russia, most countries in Europe, Australia, that have less than 10%. This means that they are really far from poverty. Instead, we have countries such as Brazil, well, most of South America, Caribbean countries, we have Mexico also, some countries at Africa, and other countries at the Middle East, that they suffer from the 20 to the 50%. And well, obviously, we have countries at Africa and other countries from the Middle East and Caribbean countries that suffer from the 50 to the 95%. Now, I will show you another graph when it will be the moment that you will understand everything and that all will make sense. This graph, according to the global report of philanthropy represents the investment in philanthropy of each country. First of all, we have the United States, that they had invested more than $800 billion on philanthropy. That leads us the reason why they have the best education, the best employment. And that leads us also for the reason that many Latin Americans want to cross the border in order to have a better life, an optimism life. But we also have countries such as the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, France, that they had invested more than $20 billion on philanthropy. Now, I think that you will wonder, where's Mexico if they had shown lots of strength during the Mexico's earthquake? There is the problem that we as a country just focus on a certain circumstance and not thinking what happened at next, what was the most important things throughout that situation. And it is actually as a trend. And I will place you an example. Because nowadays that we were passing throughout this pandemic, people were helping where the cases were increasing. But now that the cases are decreasing, no one is helping. When the cases were decreasing, many people started to help with medical tools, and sometimes just by that. But they didn't focus what was the social problem that the pandemic was leaving us, which was many kids didn't have any education because they didn't have a TV where to see the classes, or also they didn't have a computer where to receive their classes. And also, the employees, they were fired from their jobs because they were sent to home office and they didn't have a computer, so they were fired. And this is my intention. These are the trends, and I want that trends as philanthropy, as Latin Americans, we have defined philanthropy as a trend. And we haven't established the word philanthropy as a long-term vision. And I really don't want that other philanthropies or other countries come to the rescue for us. We really need to have the initiative for philanthropy. I finally want to make a brief comment about how we have the responsibility by all the values and virtues that God has left us, in order for a moment that we had been throughout adversity and we battled to it. Finally, I want to conclude with an American anti-slavery editor, a brief quote that it says, "Never respect men merely for their riches, but rather for their philanthropy. We don't value the sun for its height, but for its use." Gamaliel Bailey. Thanks for listening to me.